So now we're watching round 11 of the Latin American International Championships, which is Dylan Salvanera versus Hugo Santos. Now Dylan has a team of Rillaboom, Gholdengo, Landorus, Fire Ogrepon, Water Urshifu, and Tornadus. Whereas Hugo has a team of Rillaboom, Iron Bundle, Heatran, Dark Urshifu, Flutter and Iron Hands. So an interesting thing about this matchup is the speed controls on both teams. So Hugo's only speed control is Icy Wind on both his Flutter and his Iron Bundle, whereas Dylan has the Tornadus, which obviously has Tailwind. And majority of the time, Tailwind is better into Icy Wind teams than Icy Wind is into Tailwind teams. So I feel like the Tornadus on Dylan's side is very important in this matchup, because if he gets the Tailwind up, chances are he's going to be outspeeding most of the time. I think Dylan should also probably be bringing his own Water Urshifu. It's pretty strong into a lot of Hugo's Pokemon, and it's Dylan's only Dark Resist, and as Hugo's got his Dark Urshifu, I think having a Dark Resist is good. Fire Ogrepon also looks very good. Before it terrors, it can hit everything on Hugo's side for at least neutral, as its only Fire Resist is Flash Fire Heatran, but the Ogrepon has Mold Breaker. The last Pokemon on Dylan's side, maybe Rillaboom? I think Rillaboom is quite strong here. It can hit a lot of Hugo's Pokemon for a lot of damage. It does have high horsepower, which means it can hit the Heatran well, and it does have U-Turn, which means it can hit the Rillaboom well, and then Woodhammer does a lot into the other Pokemon, but it doesn't have Grassy Glide, and I think Grassy Glide would actually be huge in this matchup. But he does have Grassy Glide on the Ogerpon, so by bringing it, he does give his own Ogerpon redirection. So I feel like those are the four Dylan should bring. I think realistically he could bring the Gholdengo or the Landorus instead. They're both not bad here. I would be relatively surprised to see Gholdengo though, as it's not very good into Iron Hands, Heatran, or Urshifu. I think Landorus is pretty strong as well, but it being Scarf and there being an Iron Bundle on the other side makes it a bit risky to bring in my opinion, but it's pretty strong into everything else. And then from Hugo's side, if Dylan does bring the Tornadus Tailwind mode, he is going to be slower most of the game. So the way he has to counteract this is being bulkier and being able to live enough turns for the Tailwind to go and then be faster. And he has some quite good tools to do this. He has Iron Hands, which is obviously a very bulky Pokemon. It's pretty good into Tornadus. It will have to hit this Tornadus twice because it's sashed, however. He also has Sash Urshifu, which I think is going to be huge in this matchup. I think a fairly safe lead for Hugo would be Fake Out plus Urshifu, and I think Iron Hands is a lot better than Rillaboom. Rillaboom I don't think should come in this matchup. It only really looks good into Dylan's Water Ogerpon. The rest of Dylan's team looks pretty good into Rillaboom. So I think there should be Iron Hands Urshifu. Iron Bundle looks very good if it's not being outsped. So I think you want to try and stall out the Tailwind and then late game win with Iron Bundle. And then as lastly, I think you probably go Heatran, mainly because of the Protect. I think it also forces the Ogerpon on the other side to not be able to Terra easily. But there being high horsepower on the other side, a Fire Ogerpon, a Water Urshifu, and a Landorus makes Heatran quite difficult to position in this matchup. But I don't think the Flutter or the Rillaboom really help position more. The Flutter is going to be heavily threatened as well, depending on how bulky it is. So maybe you do actually go for Rillaboom just to have the double Fake Out and the Grassy Glide priority. And we do see Dylan lead Fire Ogerpon and Tornadus into Hugo's Rillaboom Urshifu. So in this position, Hugo can threaten just a Fake Out Wicked Blow. If you want to protect from the Fake Out, you can't protect versus the Wicked Blow from the Urshifu. So if you're Dylan, you're in a bit of an awkward position where you might have to call where it attacks. I think you can also just double attack. He can't Fake Out both, and both of Dylan's Pokemon are threatening the opposing Pokemon a lot. The Bleakwood Storm is super effective against both of them, and Fire Ogerpon can just one-shot this Rillaboom if it doesn't Terra. So we do see a Terra coming out from Hugo's Urshifu, so that is the Terra Dark, making it not weak to flying anymore, but more importantly making it so much more powerful. And I think I'll be interested to see what he does. He does Fake Out into the Ogerpon. I imagine this is also a Wicked Blow into the Ogerpon. Bleakwood Storm comes out, does a lot of damage into both of them. 90% to the Rillaboom and over 50% to the Urshifu. And we do see a Wicked Blow come out and just KO this Ogerpon. So that Ogerpon died straight away, but I think that's a trade I would like making if I was Dylan. That Bleak Windstorm did a lot of damage. And now Dylan has to decide who he thinks he should go into. We do see he has Rillaboom or Landorus. That does mean he didn't bring Urshifu, which I personally think is a mistake, but Dylan obviously knows the team better than me and probably has a good plan in mind. He does bring in Landorus, that does seem better here. The Intimidate is quite good here, which a lot of the time you think Intimidate's not very good into Urshifu because it usually crits, but now it's probably going to want to be Sucker Punching, so intimidating that is quite big. I think Dylan's in a fairly easy position to just click Bleak Wind again and do anything with Landorus, maybe a U-turn to see if there's any switches from Hugo. And as long as he connects, he should be fine this turn. Whereas Hugo really has to reposition. And we do see that's what he's doing. He detects on his Urshifu and switches in the Iron Hands. Iron Hands should be quite a good switch in here. And we see the Landorus lock in to U-turn, going into the Protect. So now it has to U-turn next turn with an Iron Hands on the field. That is not good for Dylan at all. And Dylan misses the Bleak Windstorm on Iron Hands, which would have done nice damage, but it wouldn't have done anywhere close to a KO. So now Dylan's in a really awkward position where he has to switch out the Landorus either with a U-turn or just switching it out directly. Hugo might be able to live a Bleak Windstorm on his Urshifu from here, and if he thinks he does, he could probably just fake out Wicked Blow the Landorus to get rid of that slot. And if he doesn't think he lives, he can probably just do a lot of damage to the Tornadus this turn with his Iron Hands. Whereas Dylan probably just wants to be Bleak Windstorming and U-turning. I don't think there's much else he can do here, which will be good. We do see the Urshifu switch out from Hugo, so probably thinking he's not going to be able to live either attack. Going into the Iron Bundle, that's probably a very good switch in here. We'll have to see what the Iron Hands does. I imagine with that play, it's going for a fake out onto the Tornadus or a Wild Charge. The U-turn does go into Iron Bundle, does okay damage for a U-turn, and Dylan has to go into his last Pokemon, which is Rillaboom, which importantly here does not have Grassy Glide. It not having Grassy Glide I think is huge here, because otherwise it would be able to threaten the Iron Bundle, which doesn't matter anyway because the Iron Bundle just gets knocked out by the Bleak Windstorm. That's why I thought he was probably had to go for a fake out that turn to switch it in, but instead he decides to sack the Iron Bundle. I don't know if that was a sack on purpose or if he just thought he didn't need the Iron Bundle anymore, but he does bring the Tornadus to its sash, which means a Grassy Glide or a Sucker Punch from either of his two Pokemon in the back will KO it no matter what. A fake out will as well, so the Tornadus is threatened for the rest of the game. However, I don't know if Hugo has great ways to hit this Rillaboom. Hugo doesn't have a bug move on his own Rillaboom, and the Iron Hands can do some damage, but I think it usually loses a 1v1 to Rillaboom. So he's going to have to rely on the Urshifu a lot, which is going to be threatened by Dylan's Landorus in the back. So I feel like Dylan is probably in quite a good position here. Both players do also have the Terra, so that could switch up the matchup a bit. I think the Terra flying from Dylan is probably the best thing to go for, as he'll be able to start doing a lot of damage with that and resisting grass instead of being neutral to it. We do see Dylan switching out the Rillaboom into the Landorus, probably deciding that is how he's going to win the game. And he doesn't want to take too much damage on it. And Hugo switches out the Iron Hands into the Urshifu, which we do see is on about 55%. And what is Hugo's Rillaboom going to do? It does fake out into the Landorus, which just switched in as the Tornadus protects. So, a big thing there is Dylan's switch went first, which means that the Urshifu from Hugo's side is not intimidated. So it'll be interesting to see if the Sucker Punch, how much the Sucker Punch can do to the Landorus. Because if you think that's going to KO, which I don't think it will, but if you think that's going to KO, Hugo can fairly safely just Grassy Glide and Sucker Punch. But if that doesn't KO, then if Dylan just decides to KO this Urshifu, his own Rillaboom I think should win in the end game. And we do see a Tailwind come out from the Tornadus, I guess just thinking it's going to go down to a Grassy Glide anyway. And we do see the Sucker Punch come out. Is the Sucker Punch going to KO? And it doesn't come anywhere near KOing, but the Grassy Glide on top does pick up the knockout. That double up is huge for Hugo, getting rid of that Landorus, and now it's a 2v1 where Dylan's Tornadus is very low HP. And the grassy terrain did just go down, but he's going to set it back up, which means Hugo is going to have a Grassy Glide priority again, which is huge for him because that means he can still threaten the Tornadus no matter what. So I think in retrospect, Dylan probably should have just Bleak Stormed and attacked with the Landorus. I don't see a big reason not to do that. I also feel like Terra the Landorus was probably better, as he probably doesn't need a Terra the rest of this game anyway. Unless he thinks he needs Terra Fire for some reason from his Rillaboom. And if you're Hugo, you probably want to get rid of his Tornadus as soon as you can to stop it from being able to get any kills. We do see the Tornadus protecting, and then the Urshifu on Hugo's side protecting, deciding the Urshifu on his side is very important in this matchup. Going for Grassy Glide onto the Tornadus, not being able to get the KO because of the Protect, and then a Wood Hammer going into the Protect. I think that play from Hugo was actually his objectively best play, because if he called that wrong and Dylan did attack into the Rillaboom, he gets a free switch into Iron Hands, which means he can fake out the Tornadus next turn to get the KO, presuming there's no double Protect. Whereas if the Tornadus doesn't protect, he KOs it with Grassy Glide, and if Dylan did what he did, he just gets to click Grassy Glide again. So that was a really strong play from Hugo, and I guess Dylan there was trying to go for a choke. I think at this point you have to go for luck happening or a choke because you're in such a rough position. Whereas if you're Hugo, you probably just Grassy Glide and Wicked Blow or Grassy Glide switch. We do see him Grassy Glide switch. With the Iron Hand on that much HP, if he thinks he's going to live the Wood Hammer, that switch is definitely good. We do see a double Protect happen from the Tornadus though. Grassy Glide going into that. That is quite big from the Tornadus. But is it enough? The Wood Hammer is not enough to KO the Iron Hands. Now it feels like a fairly safe fake out into the Rillaboom and Grassy Glide into the Tornadus for Hugo. And then it's a 3v1, and I don't think Dylan can win that. Especially as he doesn't have Grassy Glide, so when the Tailwind is over, he's going to be outsped by the Urshifu and get Wicked Blow, probably KO'd. So I think this game should be... this should be Hugo's game. I don't see a way Dylan can come back into this. Maybe he needs a triple Protect to be able to set up Tailwind again, KO the Iron Hands, and even then it feels rough. We do see him go for the triple Protect and not get it. Fake out into the Rillaboom just to stop it from doing anything that turn, and a Grassy Glide picking up the Tornadus, and that should be game for Hugo. He just needs to wait until his Urshifu comes back in and get the Wicked Blow. So, if you're Dylan, how do you adjust? And I'm not sure how you do. Turn 1 losing his Ogerpon was quite big, as the Rillaboom from Hugo's side put in a lot of work. Even though I said I didn't think it was very good this matchup, it put in so much work once the Ogerpon was gone. Having double fake out was big. I think that, see what Hugo brought, maybe you can bring the gholdengo? Just because it's immune to fake outs, but it feels so risky to bring it into a Dark Urshifu because you'd have to rely on the Terra. But it is Terra Dragon, which means you can make it resist a lot of the hits that it wouldn't otherwise like being hit by. We do see a Wood Hammer come out from Dylan's Rillaboom, getting the KO. Probably going to see a U-turn from Hugo, I imagine. Oh wait, no, Hugo doesn't have U-turn, so he just goes for Wood Hammer. And now he should just bring in the Urshifu, Wicked Blow, and win the game. I feel like a big part of this game was the fact that Dylan didn't have Grassy Glide on his own Rillaboom. I think Grassy Glide on his own Rillaboom would have been huge here. If you're Hugo, I don't think you realistically change what he did. I think he brought the right Pokemon. The double fake out was huge in this matchup because Dylan doesn't have much to stop that, especially as 2 of the Pokemon he brought don't have fake out, and then the Pokemon that do have fake out he can threaten with Urshifu. And we do see the forfeit coming out from Dylan. I guess deciding he's decided what he wants to do next game or doesn't want to play out the rest of the game. So what does Dylan do to adjust? That's the important thing to think now. If you're Dylan, what does he do to adjust? I think it feels very tough. That lead from Hugo was very oppressive, was very strong. He couldn't really do much to stop that. Maybe he needs to bring Tornadus in the back. Although the Tornadus did a lot of damage turn 1. So it wasn't a bad lead, but maybe he needs to go something like Ogerpon or Urshifu? But that doesn't feel very good either. I think he was right leading the Tornadus. I think Tornadus is a very good lead because it can still threaten a lot of damage. Maybe he needs to go something like Tornadus Rillaboom so that he also has fake out pressure. I think that's the adjustment I want to see from Dylan so that he doesn't just have to take an attack without being able to stop it in any way. And we do see the same lead from Hugo with the Urshifu Rillaboom, and we see the Rillaboom Tornadus lead from Dylan. And importantly, the Grassy Surge from Dylan's Rillaboom came off first, suggesting it most likely is the faster Rillaboom. So I think, knowing that, you probably want to fake out this turn. I'm not sure which you fake out. If you fake out the opposing Rillaboom and Bleakwood Storm, you're guaranteed damage onto something, as the opposing Rillaboom can't protect, but you do let the Urshifu attack if it decides to. However, it's very risky for Hugo to attack with his Urshifu, because if it gets faked out, he loses his sash for no reason. And we do see the Rillaboom switch out for Hugo into Iron Hands, resetting another fake out, probably going to see a protect from his Urshifu. We do see the detect, and what does Dylan go for? He just goes for the Bleakwood Storm, doesn't even go for the fake out. And I believe we did see a U-turn. We do see a U-turn, resetting his fake out. That's a very strong play from Dylan. A Wood Hammer would have probably also been very good there, but I think resetting his fake out is very good. That's probably as good of a turn as you're going to get for Dylan. And he goes into Landorus, and this Landorus threatens the Iron Hands a lot, and if it terrors, can bring the Urshifu down to sash. So if you're Dylan, you probably just Bleakwood Storm, and then it depends if you want to terror this turn or not. You could realistically just Stomping Tantrum to break the Urshifu's sash, but then you're not doing too much damage. That's probably not going to be a 2-shot. You could Stomping Tantrum the Iron Hands, but I feel like you want to be targeting the Urshifu. I think that's the problem for Dylan. But if you're Hugo, I think here you want to prioritize getting rid of the Tornadus, because if you get rid of the Tornadus, your Iron Bundle in the back is huge this matchup. So if I'm Hugo, I think I fake out Wicked Blow the Tornadus. I'm not sure if he needs to Terror to get the KO. I think Hugo would know that. And we do see a Terror coming out. I imagine this is the Terror Dark into Hugo. It's also fairly safe for him to fake out the Landorus, as the Landorus can't protect. He could do something like fake out the Landorus, Wicked Blow the Tornadus, but that would just bring it to sash, so I don't think that's a particularly good play. We do see the fake out go into the Tornadus and a Stomping Tantrum from Dylan's Landorus into Urshifu, doing about 40%, which probably isn't enough damage for this game. And we do see the Wicked Blow coming out, KOing the Tornadus, and I do not like this position for Dylan at all. It feels like now he just needs to wait to get the Iron Bundle in. I think Iron Bundle Urshifu for Hugo just wins this game now, mainly because this Rillaboom doesn't have Grassy Glide. The Ogerpon does, however. The Ogerpon having Grassy Glide is huge this matchup, because I think it will one-shot the Iron Bundle. It definitely will if it terrors and gets the +1 attack, but otherwise it might be close, as the Iron Bundle can't terror to get rid of its grass weakness. So I think Dylan is now in a fairly safe position where he can threaten the Urshifu with maybe like an Ivy Cudgel and Stomping Tantrum with the Iron Hands. He could maybe make some sort of call and like double the Iron Hands. I feel like if you're Hugo, you probably just protect the Urshifu and maybe switch into Rillaboom, try and reset a fake out. If Dylan does call that, then you get a free switch into either Iron Bundle or Iron Hands for next turn. That is presuming he has Iron Bundle in the back, which I think he should. I think it would be a big mistake for him not to bring it this turn. And we do see Dylan switch out for Landorus this turn. going into his own Rillaboom. And I guess we'll see if Hugo does switch or not. He does switch out his Iron Hands into the Rillaboom. So that's actually a very strong play from Dylan, because now he has the faster fake out this turn. And if Hugo protected the Urshifu, he can fairly safely just fake out and either Grassy Glide or Ivy Cudgel, depending on if he wants to risk taking a Sucker Punch or not. I imagine the Grassy Glide will KO at +1 in terrain. We do see the Detect. And the Grassy Glide go into the Protect. So, the important thing is, does Grassy Glide KO? Even if it doesn't, does Hugo risk Sucker Punching when a fake out Grassy Glide might come out? I feel like if you're Dylan, you fake out the Rillaboom and you Grassy Glide the Urshifu, and if you think it's KOing, that's a really safe play. If you're Dylan, you probably want to be switching out the Urshifu, I imagine, into the Iron Hands. You could maybe make some sort of play where you switch both, but I don't think you'd want Iron Bundle in this position. You could maybe go for a double protect if you're Hugo. He does switch out the Rillaboom though, keeping in the Urshifu, which is a play I'm not sure if I like. But he doesn't! Dylan does not go for a Grassy Glide, not thinking it's going to KO, taking a Sucker Punch, only taking about 60%, so that's not bad, and an Ivy Cudgel does come out from Dylan's Ogerpon, getting the KO onto Urshifu, and now Hugo has a decision of what he can go into, and I guess we'll find out his last. If he does have the Heatran, however, the Heatran is going to be very good from now on, as the Ogerpon can't hit it now. Dylan's Rillaboom can, but it's susceptible to a fake out this turn. But it is the Iron Bundle, and this is most likely really threatened by a Grassy Glide this turn. So I feel like Hugo has to fake out the Ogerpon if he wants to attack with his Iron Bundle. I think if you're Dylan, what might be a fairly safe play is Grassy Glide would hammer the Iron Bundle. However, Iron Bundle hands probably can't KO Rillaboom this turn, so you could probably like just Spiky Shield, Wood Hammer. You could Spiky Shield Protect, but I feel like that's a bit risky because then you don't have switch-ins. So I think having switch-ins is a lot better, just in case Hugo's in a position where he gets fake out and you've just protected. And we do see Dylan switch out his Rillaboom into Landorus, which I think is quite risky. We do see the Iron Hand switch out into the Rillaboom, and we saw a Spiky Shield come out from the Ogerpon and a Protect from Iron Bundle. So now this turn, the Iron Bundle is fairly safe to attack into either thing. Importantly there, the Spiky Shield protected. No, importantly there, the Spiky Shield failed. So Dylan can Spiky Shield again if he wants to. Hugo can probably just fake out the Ogerpon, freeze dry the Lando, and no matter what, he's getting super effective ice damage into the Lando slot, even if it switches. But it's whether he thinks that damage is worth it. However, as you're probably living the freeze dry, I think Spiky Shield and switching Rillaboom from Dylan is a fairly safe play. I'm not sure how many turns of grassy terrain are left. Actually, I think it just ended. So switching in the Rillaboom is fine to reset the terrain. And I think here you almost definitely want to Spiky Shield. I don't think attacking with Ogerpon is a good play at all. Hugo, I guess, could maybe attack and switch in his Iron Hands, but I don't see that being a particularly strong play either. And we do see the Spiky Shield come out from Ogerpon as Dylan switches in his Rillaboom. And Hugo's Rillaboom just fakes out the opposing Rillaboom, which was a Landorus slot, and goes for the Hydro Pump. So, risking taking a Grassy Glide, maybe he lives a Grassy Glide, but I feel like a +1 he can't. I feel like there's no way he does. And now Hugo's in a position where he probably just fakes out and switches out for Rillaboom. I feel like Dylan, you have to Grassy Glide the bundle just on the off chance he doesn't protect. And we do see a protect coming out from the Iron Bundle, but no switch from Hugo and a Grassy Glide go into it. What is Hugo going to do with his Rillaboom? We do see a U-turn come out doing about 45% and bringing in the Landorus, which is going to intimidate it. And if Hugo goes for the high horsepower onto the Ogerpon, this is going to do decent damage, but I imagine after the Intimidate, it's not going to be close to KOing at all. But if it's a Wood Hammer into Landorus, that's also going to do a lot of damage, but I don't think it's necessary damage. It does go for the high horsepower, doing a good amount of damage, but maybe not enough. It is in range of another high horsepower. And now, if you're Hugo, maybe you just Hydro Pump the Ogerpon and high horsepower the Ogerpon to guarantee you're going to kill it, but then I think you lose to the Landorus in the endgame, so I don't think you can do that. So I feel like Dylan should win from this position. I think he's pinned Hugo as long as the Grassy Glide KOs the Iron Bundle. Iron Bundle does have quite strong physical defense, but I don't think it'll be enough. We do see the Iron Bundle switch. Hugo seeing that he's pinned and trying to find a way out of it. Grassy Glide does come out, does about 40% of his Iron Hands, good damage, and then U-turn into the Rillaboom, leaving it on like 5%. But Hugo now gets to high horsepower the opposing Ogerpon, and if it connects and KOs, his Iron Bundle in the back is looking very good here. We do see the high horsepower come out, KOs the Ogerpon. And now the Landorus comes back in for Dylan. And I guess you fake out the Iron Hands and Stomping Tantrum the Rilla. Maybe you fake out the Rillaboom on the opposing side and Stomping Tantrum. I'm not actually sure what you do here if you're Dylan. I think if you're Hugo, your safest play is to just fake out the Landorus, I guess, and U-turn. I don't think much can go wrong with that. Because if your Iron Hands gets faked out and Stomping Tantrums, you get to U-turn and you get the fake out next turn. He does go for the straight switch. I do think that's an incredibly risky play. I guess he's probably faking out the Rillaboom this turn with that play. I think if he wasn't fake out for Rillaboom that turn, that is too risky of a play. We do see a Rock Slide come out, doing 50% to the Iron Bundle. A lot of good damage there, and if Dylan just had Grassy Glide on his Rillaboom, I think he'd be able to win this game, but I don't think he can now. I think we're going to see a Freeze Dry go into the Landorus and maybe a Rillaboom switch in, and then it's going to be Rillaboom Iron Hands. We don't have to see the Iron Hand switch out. I think we just see a Drain Punch go into the Rillaboom and a Freeze Dry go into the Landorus, and I think that's fairly safe. We do see a switch. I don't think that's particularly needed. But we'll see. And a Protect. I don't think that's his... I don't agree with that play at all. Actually, no. Sorry, I forgot. Hugo now doesn't have his booster energy. The Landorus does outspeed. And we do see the Rillaboom avoid, but it dies to the Wood Hammer anyway. And now Iron Hands is going to come in. And I think Hugo now has to fake out Freeze Dry the Landorus. And if you're Dylan, you probably just click the Rock Slide button and Wood Hammer the Iron Bundle. And then it'll come down to Iron Hands versus Rillaboom. And with an Iron Hands on that much HP, I feel like Rillaboom should be winning this end game. Maybe after the grassy terrain, the Iron Bundle is going to live a Rock Slide, but I feel like that's unlikely. So maybe here, Hugo has to hope for a Rock Slide miss and go for Fake Out into Rillaboom and Freeze Dry the Landorus. And that is what we see him going for. He does fake out the Rillaboom. Rock Slide comes out. It does connect with the Iron Bundle, but it doesn't get the knockout. Does it hit through? Does it hit through or does it flinch? It hits through. Freeze dries the Landorus. Gets the one-hit knockout, and now it's Iron Hands and Rillaboom versus... No, not Iron Hands and Rillaboom. Iron Hands and Iron Bundle versus Rillaboom. I still think Rillaboom can win this. It's going to have to take a freeze dry and then hopefully do enough damage back after Drain Punches to KO. If you're Hugo, you could potentially protect the Iron Bundle this turn, but if you get that call wrong, you could win a game that you were otherwise winning anyway. And if you're Dylan, I think you just have to prioritize getting rid of this Iron Bundle, because it is the thing that's going to be threatening more damage. He does just freeze dry. You see how much this does. It does around 100 HP, which is a lot. Dylan goes for the U-turn, 100% accurate move that's going to KO and doesn't do recoil. That makes a lot of sense. And I imagine we're seeing a Drain Punch. We do see Drain Punch, and the Drain Punch just KOs, and Hugo manages to win that game thanks to how bulky his Iron Bundle was. So I think that was a very well played game by Hugo. It felt like Hugo was in a very rough position in that in-game, but still managed to win. Iron Bundle's bulk really pulled through there, but also very well played by Dylan. I think both players played very well there.
Thank you very much, casters. I am joined by the winner of that amazing match we were able to show on the broadcast. Hugo, how are you feeling right now after that victory?
Como você está se sentindo depois dessa vitória?
Olha, eu estou muito nervoso. É muito legal poder representar o Brasil no IC. Eu não comecei muito bem hoje, mas depois dessa partida eu fiquei muito confidente no time. E eu estou muito, muito feliz. Muito obrigado.
I'm very happy. It's really cool that I can represent Brazil in this international event. And I didn't start very well today, but now I'm really, really, really happy.
Well, things are definitely picking up for you, and I can see the support that you've got in the crowd. Let's dive a little deeper into that game. So in game one, you really overwhelmed your opponent with priority moves. Was that your strategy in that game one?
Vamos falar sobre o primeiro game. Então, no primeiro game, você realmente surpreendeu o seu oponente com movimento de prioridade. Essa foi sua estratégia para aquele jogo?
Então, quando eu planejei o time, essa foi uma das principais estratégias, abusar principalmente do Sucker Punch do Urshifu Terra Dark e do Glass Glide do Rillaboom, além do Fake Out, porque o meu time, o Fake Out é a minha Speed Control. Então eu gosto de abusar bastante disso. O Urshifu, muitos subestimam ele, mas ele dá muito dano no Sucker Punch, junto com o Rillaboom, uma estratégia incrível de prioridade no meu time.
Yes, the whole point of the team was the priority moves. Most of my team have many priority moves. Urshifu, Rillaboom, and Sucker Punch honestly does too much damage.
We saw it do a lot of great stuff in that match, and there was one particular moment where you KO'd the Landorus with Grassy Glide. Were you confident that was going to get the knockout?
No último momento, você deu knockout no Landorus com o ataque de grama.
Ah, sim. Então, eu joguei muito, treinei muito contra a Landorus, porque é um Pokémon do meta, e eu sou muito confidente, principalmente por causa do item do Rillaboom, que é o Miracle Seed. Então aumenta muito o dano do Rillaboom junto com o terreno. E como eu disse, muita gente não espera o dano que o Sucker Punch do Urshifu mais o Glass Glide do Rillaboom dá. Então foi legal surpreender meu oponente com essa jogada.
Yeah, I trained a lot against Landorus. He was really confident because Rillaboom had Miracle Seed. So he was really confident he would KO the Landorus, especially after comboing with Sucker Punch from Urshifu, yes.
Yeah, you have to have a game plan against Landorus in this metagame at the moment. I'm glad you mentioned Urshifu because you're running the single strike variant of Urshifu, which we have really not seen here on LAIC. Can you talk us through why you put that Pokémon in your team?
Você pode falar um pouco sobre por que você colocou o Urshifu Single Strike no seu time? Porque a gente não vê muito por aqui.
Ah, sim. Então, o Urshifu normalmente é o Rapid Strike, que é o água. Então, eu testei bastante ele, junto com Tornados em outros times. Mas, quando eu vi o dano que o Urshifu Dark tinha, e uma coisa interessante, o meta não tem muitas respostas para Wicked Ball, junto com você ficar reciclando Fake Out. Então, quando eu comecei a treinar com esse time e eu vi o dano que o Urshifu podia dar, principalmente com o Tera Dark, foi a minha escolha principal e eu abandonei o Urshifu de água porque o Urshifu tá me carregando no torneio.
Yeah, he says that the usual that you see is the water Urshifu, but since he trained a lot with it, when he saw that Dark Urshifu can do a whole lot of damage, especially recycling fake outs, that's when he noticed it was the way to go.
It was great to be able to see you pilot that Pokemon, and nice to see it here on the stage. I want to just talk very quickly about that game too, because we were talking backstage and the commentators were saying in that endgame situation you could go for fake out into the Landorus very easily, but you went for the Rillaboom. Were you not worried about a Rock Slide flinch on your Iron Bundle?
Na situação do endgame, você foi no fake out você poderia ter ido no Landorus, mas você foi no Rillaboom. Você não estava com medo de alguma potencial coisa acontecer?
Ali eu tinha que arriscar. O G2, o meu oponente, jogou muito bem. Eu estava muito na desvantagem, então ali no final eu tinha que arriscar não tomar o Rock Slide Flint. Era a minha única opção, porque depois ia sobrar um 2v1. E se eu não mato o Landorus, eu provavelmente tomaria a Rock Slide Flint nos próximos turnos, possivelmente. E como ele não deu Flint, acabou ficando uma situação de 2v1 e eu consegui levar o game.
So he said he had to risk it because if he didn't risk it, he might end up in a situation, a 2v1 situation. Even though it did happen, he could make it up, but that was his fun. Yeah.
I mean, high risk, high reward. It certainly gave us an exciting viewing experience. Before you go, there is an amazing crowd out there. Is there any shout outs or anyone you would like to say thank you to while you're here on the stage?
Antes de você ir, você tem pessoal ali muito legal torcendo por você. Você quer dizer alguma coisa para alguém ou para eles?
Sim, eu gostaria de primeiro agradecer aos meus amigos brasileiros de toda a nação. Muito obrigado pelo apoio, tá representando o Brasil, principalmente minha família que está assistindo em casa. Mãe, um beijo para a senhora. E ao pessoal do meu time, DNR, e o Shoutouts Boyama também. Tamo junto, galera!
I'm sure they appreciated all of those words. Thank you for giving us an amazing match and best of luck in the rest of the competition. Of course, the Pokemon action isn't going anywhere. We're going to kick it back to the casters to continue on with the show.